That's so good. I love that. That's fantastic.
So we're wild. Being a comic is almost like being an emotional stripper. Oh shit. I think
How would I do
did
it?
it pull out or is it still in? No,
Yeah.
I'll stay calm.
Oh,
Tamer Kattan, almost 6 years. Yeah, I used to get beat up a lot at school. Way before 9/11. Way before 9/11. Like kids, they would talk about gas prices being high on the news, and I get jumped at school.
really?
100%. I'd be watching the news, and if they talked about gas prices or the Middle East, I'm like, oh shit, I'm gonna get jumped. I was 8, so I was late 70s, 1978. That started happening, and it was. I mean, I learned to fight with fists, and I got stronger and I got tougher. But there was always somebody tougher. And then one time, this kid kept beating me up, and for no reason. And there's a difference in anger between somebody beating up for a reason and somebody beating up for no reason. So I had this anger, like this need to like fight back, but I couldn't. I used to have dreams about fighting this guy underwater, because and my arms would move real slow because he was just a bigger, stronger, everything. And this one day I said, fuck it, he's gonna make fun of me anyway. So I just started making fun of his ears, and everybody laughed. And I felt, I don't know, probably the way Popeye must have felt when he ate spinach. That laugh made me sit up straight, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then he came up to me and he goes, hey, come here, I want to talk to you. And I'm like, no. And he goes, come here, I want to talk to you, I won't hit you. And I'm like, what's up? And he goes, if you stop making fun of me, I'll stop beating you up, deal? And I just looked at him and I go, yeah, okay. And I went like, wow, comedy's powerful. And then, you know, like a few weeks later, I went, well, it's nice not to get beat up, but I miss the laughs. And so I just started making fun of him, and he beat the shit out of me, but I kept making fun of him. And eventually he stopped. But I kept making, I wanted to make people laugh so bad that I knew it would come with an ass beating, and I still did it. Comedy's weird, the better you get, the harder it gets. You know, like they always say, like just like magic, the better you get, the closer they watch. And so for me, I had to get disciplined. So when I write, I don't write to be funny, I write premises, and then I let the premise float around my head. Like when you close your eyes and you see floaters, I have premises floating in my head. And sometimes I'll find the punchline from the stage, and sometimes I'll find the punchline when I'm in the mood to be funny, and I think of it. Comedy comes from being alone a lot. You know, like I was an only child, and then both parents worked 2 jobs, so I was always just alone all the time. And so I started doodling and writing and thinking of jokes, and it started making me, I think kind of turned me into like a writer a little bit. If you're a comic, like especially right now, and you don't talk about real topics, it's like being a musician in the 60s and singing about pop music.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like there's some big things happening right now, and I think it's up to us to have an opinion, especially because we can't trust the media anymore.
Yeah.
It's nice to have a regular person who's just like everybody else stand up and say, hey, here's how I feel. Doesn't mean that's the rule, doesn't mean that's the way it is, it just says here's one person's opinion. You know, so I think that's important in comedy. You know, I talk about real stuff, and I think, you know, I think right now is a really important time for us to remember the most that it's not Americans versus Americans, it's people versus power. That's when America was the greatest, when it was people versus the power. Now it's the people versus the people. And so my message has always been, like, not just religiously, but even as America, we need to get united again. Once the people turn on each other, that's a massive problem. So I find the funny in that, believe it or not. Like I can talk about stuff like that, but find the funny in it. I don't always do crowd work. I do crowd work when I feel it's necessary, like it's as a way to pick up energy in the room. I do crowd work the same way a school teacher will ask a kid in the back row to answer a question, to wake up the whole class like, oh shit, I better pay attention because he might ask me a question.
Really?
I struggle with it every day. I mean, the thing that made me stop was probably my mom, love for my mom, and wanting her to be proud of me, and comedy. I mean, when I started comedy, a week later I went off drugs, and I haven't touched them since.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't touched cocaine specifically since I started comedy.
Business,
yeah.
That's pretty amazing.
Totally, yeah. In this business, quitting cocaine is like being on a diet while working at a diner. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's like, you want this extra cake? Yeah. I'm like, no thanks.
Absolutely.
Put that cocaine in a doggy bag and give it to somebody else, yeah. I have a great mom, a shitty dad, a lot of family that I don't know because of religious stuff, different religious backgrounds, so I don't really have a lot of family. I'm an only child, underlined in bold. I'm an
affiliate?
atheist.
Are you an atheist?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, fascinating. Yeah, it is kind of ironic that, Jewish lineage goes from the mom
And Muslim lineage goes from the dad.
Yeah, that's
Islamic lineage. It's like, there's only one race, right? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? It's human race. That's it.
Yeah.
That's the one thing that you know for sure when you end up in a family like that. You know for sure that there's only one race. That's it. And for me, same with religions. Like, I almost think of God almost like Johnny Depp. Like everybody goes like British people would be like, there's only one Johnny Depp, and that Johnny Depp is a pirate, and he's a captain and a pirate, and he's this. And then all of a sudden Hindus will be like, no way, there's this other Johnny Depp, and he's not human, he's super weird, he's got scissors for fingers. And I'm like, oh yeah, there's more than one Johnny Depp. And then black people are like, nuh-uh, there's only one Johnny Depp, and he owns a chocolate factory, and if you got a gold ticket, you come get some chocolate. So it's like, and that's the way I think of God. Maybe God's just this brilliant actor who's been in these who's performed in these different religions, and the different religions are different movies. They're just stories, man. Same with the movies, they're just stories. And if you listen to the meaning of the story, there's no religion on earth that says we don't all come from the same two shitty parents.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, religion or science, the one thing those two agree on is we all came from the same two shitty parents. And no religion says these are different species. Like, we're all brothers and sisters. But in what household do brothers and sisters discipline each other while the dad watches? Like, that's his job. That's offensive to God, to me, if you try to punish someone. That's God's job. You know what I mean?
Interesting, spoken from the atheist. You don't believe.
Well, here's the thing. I am an atheist, but I believe that people are stupid. I think we're real stupid. Like my grandmother used to say to me, she'd go, I kept asking, I'm like, I want chocolate, I want chocolate, I want chocolate. And she's like, no. And I'm like, and then later on in life, when I got older, I was asking her about God. And I go, why can't you explain it to me? She goes, remember when you were a kid and you kept saying, I want chocolate, I want chocolate, I want chocolate? And I go, yeah. She's like, I couldn't explain to you about your blood sugar. I couldn't explain to you about the dangers of diabetes or about this. It's above your level of intellect. You couldn't understand what I needed to explain. She goes, and that might be why some people don't understand God, because we're not at the level of understanding. So I am an atheist, technically, but I guess technically agnostic. I'm an atheist that doesn't believe in people. That doesn't believe in like the intelligence of people. I think like we have an ability to be great, but we also have the ability to be incredibly stupid. I did this one room. I intentionally used to go to rooms where they didn't want comedy. Like, because the way I learned comedy was by making people who didn't like me. And that, to me, that's what comedy always was. Like, even the therapist, Freud, used to always say, comedy is a weapon of the underdog. And it was, that for me, that's exactly, it was a weapon of, I made a guy stop punching me with jokes. And so I went to this one club, not a club, bar, and it's a bar next to a veterans hospital, but mostly older veterans next to the VA hospital. They go to the VA hospital, they get frustrated, and then they'd come in and self-medicate. So I went in there and and they don't like, they turn their backs to comedy like frustrated pandas, like, And I went up there one time and I talked about being Egyptian, and this old guy just walked in, and I don't think he heard my whole bit, but I made a comment where I said I was in Texas, a guy yelled out, God bless America. And I said, you know what God would say if he heard you say that? He'd say, what's America? God didn't create countries. Do you know what I mean? People did that. He took that as un-American, which is silly. It wasn't un-American, it's pro-human. Yeah. I'm more American than anyone I know, besides my friends who are soldiers. I've gone to Afghanistan 3 times for the troops, and I would die for this country. You know what I mean? So this old guy in the middle of that set, there's a bright light on me, and all of a sudden I just see this bottle flying at me. And I turn my head and it hits the wall, and there's a full bottle of ketchup. And I lean in beyond the light so I could see, and I go, why did you do that? And this old guy just looks at me and goes, I don't know. And he started to cry. And I went, oh my God. And then the whole room, and the guy started going, and the other older guy started apologizing. And I go, I'm gonna come up here. And he goes, I'm really sorry. I go, come up here. You can't say sorry from down there. You gotta come up here and say sorry to me face to face. And he comes up and I go, what's your name? And he goes, Alan. And I go, Alan, you need to hug me right now. And then he goes, man, I'm so sorry. And he gave me a hug. And then he went off stage, and I go give Alan a round of applause. And they all applauded for him. And then maybe 2 months later, I went back. And notoriously, these guys do not watch comedy. That as I was going up, I saw this from the side. One guy tapped an older guy on the shoulder, and then the other guy tapped an older guy, and he goes, that's him, that's him, that's him. And they all turned around and watched me and listened to every joke and laughed at every joke. And it was that, to me, was the most memorable moment by far.